Hi, everybody. I just went ahead and let everybody in from the waiting room. Welcome and thank you for joining me. My name is Aileen Vickory, and I am the study abroad and global engagement advisors here at Cal State Fullerton. Can everybody hear me okay? Just go ahead and give me a thumbs up or yes in the chat if you can hear me. Awesome. Okay, cool. So Audrey can hear me. Thank you, Audrey. Okay, Amy can hear me. Thank you, Amy. Awesome. Okay, so I'm just gonna give it a couple more minutes. Thank you, Yana, to see if anyone else is going to be joining us. I'll be starting in just another minute, and everybody can also see my screen, right? It should be the cover page of my presentation, Making Study Abroad Count, an Academics Workshop for SAGE Programs. Can everybody see my screen? Yes, okay. Thank you again for that confirmation. Okay, one more minute and we'll begin. Okay, cool. Thank you, Yvonne. All right, and that's 3:02. So let's go ahead and get started. Thank you again, everyone, for joining me today at 3 o'clock on a Wednesday, the week before Thanksgiving. It's nice to see everybody. And so, as I said earlier, my name is Aileen, and I am going to be your Study Abroad and Global Engagement Advisor, or your SAGE advisor. And we are celebrating International Education Week, hosting a bunch of events for which this workshop dedicated to academics for SAGE programs is one of them. And so let's go ahead and get started. So a little overview of what I'm going to talk about. So for my introduction is I'm going to be telling you a little bit about the introduction to and the context of this presentation. It's not just about, the classes and the grades and things like that. I want to dig a little deeper into certain things. And then I'll be talking about the academics in each of the SAGE phases. So here in the Study Abroad office, we divide where a student is in their journey based on one of these phases. Are they still looking into programs? Are they in the advising phase? At which point, when it comes to their academics, they're still researching programs and looking at different courses. Are they currently applying to a program, meaning they've zeroed in on one or two programs and now they're delving deep into the courses that they potentially can offer, maybe talking about it with some of their advisors, getting them signed off if necessary. And then after the application phase, they're accepted into their programs. That's the pre-departure. That's the phase right before you get ready to go to your host location or country. And at that point, you're beginning to, if you got some courses approved, if your program required it, you're starting to upload those as well. So we can see so you can see, what classes your departments are taking certain courses towards your requirements. And maybe some of your programs are already allowing you to enroll in some of those classes that you'll be taking abroad. And then once you depart, you're now on your program. You're there, you're participating on your program. For sure, the rest of you will begin to enroll in your courses. You'll be studying, you'll be having a great time. And then when you come back, you'll be in the returnee phase, finishing, probably getting any, loose course approvals done. If there's anything you registered in that you didn't get approved before, you can still get more courses approved after and get them transferred. And then we just work on finishing your transferring your coursework until basically everything has been transferred correctly. Okay, and at the end of this session, I'll try to give as much time for questions and answers as possible. All right, so why this presentation? Of course, it makes sense. Academics, is a big part of study abroad, but really some of the things that I want to tackle that, students are very, very much concerned about. I hear it all the time in my advising sessions is, or when I talk to students that say, I'm not interested because of certain reasons, there's this really big perpetual fear that studying abroad, will, sorry, my phone is going off. Okay, that there's this fear that studying abroad will delay graduation, or that it won't count, that the classes that you take abroad aren't going to count for anything, or that, to study abroad for a semester or a year just isn't worth it according to their, academic progress or standards or goals and things like that. Okay, and then if you are already considering studying abroad, then it is a very important component of why you're going abroad. It's the study and study abroad, right? The other thing too is I'm seeing some familiar names here. Some of you I've advised is I tend to tell students, I kind of break up my advising into 3 sessions. One is I get to know you, I get to know, what you're trying to accomplish abroad. I try to recommend some programs, resources, scholarships. And then in the second, I usually tell students come back so we can talk about the academics of the particular programs you're looking at. And that can be a 30+ minute advising session just on the academics alone. And I have it so frequently that I thought maybe, let's dedicate a whole workshop to this, get it recorded, get everything out there for your convenience so you can watch it over and over as you need. Okay, students always have lots of questions regarding the academics. How do I get things approved? How will I know what classes are available? Things like that. Even if I tell them, sometimes they forget because it is a lot of info. And then, students just need reminders on this information sometimes. They say, remember, this part is important. The other thing too, the reason why I say, making it count is also to offer a bigger and different perspective sometimes. Sometimes, you have a conversation with somebody and that conversation can kind of open your mind to something you hadn't considered. So I get a lot of students who come in with a very tunnel vision that they have, and it can be caused from many things, their advisors saying things which are fine, or some of the marketing that says, get in, get out, that kind of thing. And, sometimes you just want to take another perspective to say, hey, make sure you're enjoying your college experience, make sure you're getting the most out of it. You don't have this experience your whole life to, really take on the world in the prime of your youth for many of you, right? And by that, hopefully by providing all of this, I can help you decide on a program that's right for you because we have many. Okay. So I just want to take a minute to ask you, what are your own goals? And so there's 2 questions that I have here. So before we tackle the study abroad component, think back to, why are you in college in the first place? Because a lot of this is, connected to each other. So go ahead in the chat, just write down all the reasons. Why are you even in college? Is it because to get a job? Is it because, you want to be enlightened and educated? Is it because your parents expected you to, all of the above? And if it's all of the above, that's fine. Is it because you want to make sure you get a higher salary? Is it because all of your friends, it's an expectation? Just write them all in there and let's see what we've got in the chat. All right. Ooh, got lots of responses already. All right, thank you. Let's try to read a couple of these. So someone said that I want to move forward in my professional career, to be educated and set myself up for success. Initially an expectation, but now it is to be financially stable, to get a job and an education. In college, to study a field that you're interested in, to meet other like-minded individuals pursuing your field. Awesome. These are all great responses. We have one more: to get a better job with good pay, education, and to learn more in regards to your degree, right? Okay. And so, they have similarities, but some, might prioritize certain things versus the other. But, when it comes to your education, not everybody's here for exactly the same reasons, right? And so not every program is going to be, there's no one size fits all. We're all here for different reasons. And so now thinking about, how did you end up at International Education Week and in this workshop looking into the academics of study abroad? So what are your reasons for being interested in wanting to study abroad now, right? Is it to meet those same things? Is it towards education? Is it a little bit different? Is it to now focus on meeting new people? Is it because, it's a good skill to have? Is it because you want to be adventurous before you graduate? What are your reasons for wanting to study abroad? All right, so we've already got some coming in here. And so one person wrote, to learn more about different cultures and be educated in a broader sense, to take advantage of my freedom before I start my career. Yeah, it's good timing. To broaden my perspectives and learning styles. Okay, so it becomes a little, they're related, but it becomes a little more on the personal side rather than just the transactional, like I'm here to get a job, right? Sama wrote, reason study abroad is to meet new people, learn a culture, and learn about being independent. So there are certain qualities, right, that we associate with being abroad and qualities that we associate with going to college and things like that. So the reason why I ask you those things, and then also I put, first of all, there's 2 images here, is when we talk about the broader perspective and quote unquote making study abroad count, as much as possible, we're going to try to make every course that we take abroad to count towards a gap or in your TDA and do that. But it's an imperfect process, which I'll show you, why. I mean, we get better at it, but it's still like not 100% perfect. And so first I want to have you look at the image on the computer or the screen with the scales, right? So for most part, the two that sit there is I want it to count, but I also want the experience, right? And for the most part, they're going to be just about balance. But as you're doing your research, as you're looking into the various courses, sometimes you're going to find one side is going to tip a little bit more than the other. And that's going to help you choose your programs, okay? Is it, for various reasons, there are students who are like, no, I absolutely have to have everything count. I can't take anything that, I'm a senior, I'm almost done. I don't have time to take extra classes, so I really need a program where all the courses fit. Or are you somebody who's like, no, I'm a little more flexible. Like, if the courses fit, that's awesome. If they don't, I'm okay. It's more about the experience and the overall experiences that I'm going to get out of it. So it's going to lean a little bit. And so you need to figure out which side does it lean for you when you're looking at some of these programs. The other thing too on the side is now we have a spectrum, okay? So I get to hear all these different great reasons why students want to study abroad. And it's so interesting to see the spectrum of the students that want to take this on and where they sit. So on one side of the spectrum is, again, that student who if you're, let's say, taking a semester long program, 3 units each, that's about 4 classes, and every class has to count back to their TDA to an equivalent, that's fine. That's one side of the spectrum. On the opposite side of the spectrum, I have the few students who are like, no, it doesn't have to count back because, and this is, when we talk about broadening our perspective, this student on the other side is like, I'm trying to take classes I can't get at Fullerton because that's the education I'm trying to get. That's why I want to study abroad. Why would I take classes I can just take here? I'm trying to do something I can't do. I'm trying to get a different experience, right? So no judgment towards either of those. It's very interesting to see where they fall. And the other things supporting that is, your own other circumstances. And then in between, you have students who are like, oh, a little bit of both is fine. So it's a spectrum, and I'm happy to help every type of student. And there's a program for every student. Okay, so that's something that I want to kind of touch on. All right. And so a little bit earlier as to why and that fear of, trying to quote unquote make it count and things like that. So where did the impression that studying abroad doesn't count even come from? I think for you all now, you kind of, you are maybe a little more aware that study abroad is something that students do in their college experience and things like that. And so, and there might be some myths that you have. And so something that I kind of want to put into context, because I'm a very context history based person, because it puts things into perspective. In my generation, I can't believe I'm already talking about that, but I'm not even that much older, but I'm about in my 30s, but in my generation of trying to study abroad even, which is not too long ago, just a couple of decades ahead of you, everything was limited. And so, traditionally programs that existed for students, there were much fewer program options. Typically, a lot of the times they were year-long programs. Not every student can just take off a year to do this. A lot of the times they were in European countries. The other thing too is there were fewer academic options. Sometimes there still remains to be some gaps in the majors that can go abroad, but they were severely limited before in previous generations where, sometimes that's one of the myths is, I don't speak a foreign language, or I'm not a French major, I'm not an Italian major, I don't need this, because they used to be about, perfecting a language. It's why sometimes you'd go abroad, or they were concentrated in the liberal arts field. So things like philosophy, political science, liberal studies, English, things like that. And so, if you're not any of those majors, why would you do it, right? You're going to end up taking courses that don't count, right? So that's sometimes where that happens. The other thing is there were much fewer advising resources when I studied abroad. For people in my generation who studied abroad, you were lucky if you had a study abroad office or an advisor to tell you this is how you plan out your courses, right? And things like that. Additionally, technology wasn't as advanced. So, you were lucky if you had a brochure to tell you about your program, let alone a website. And so when I studied abroad, I had a trifold piece of paper to have all the details and then decide off of that if I wanted to study abroad. It had the cost, some of the classes, who the professor was, and the dates. That was about it. Now you have so many other things, and then also fewer funding and scholarship options. So given all of these things, if it's not part of your major, if it's not in a location, if the time crunch doesn't work, if you don't have very many resources to help you, you don't have anybody to kind of guide you, it makes it it makes it easier to kind of make mistakes and take classes you don't need, or how to work them to your benefit. Okay, but where are we today? So your CSUF Study Abroad and Global Engagement Office is much different from the type of experience I had when I was studying abroad, like back in the early 2000s. So now you have a dedicated SAGE office and staff. Like, our job is to take all the things we learned in our experiences and help you so that you don't have the same, mistakes and challenges that we did. Okay, and so the other thing I want to point out is, we are a campus of almost 40,000 students. So a one size, year-long program in France where you only take French is not going to cut it for everybody. So we have a diverse range of programs, and it continues to grow and expand every year. We have year, semester, winter, summer, spring break, and fall breaks. You can take courses for your major, minor, general education abroad. Students don't know this. They think, oh, where can I go for your major? You don't only have to go for your major. You can take other classes as you need to, because your degree, which we'll talk about, is made up of more than just your major. Electives, internships. You can even go abroad and not take any classes and do one of our volunteer programs. Okay, programs can be taught in English. You can do it to learn a language and still take some courses in English, so a little bit of both, or you can do full language immersion programs if that's what you're studying or trying to perfect. Currently, we have programs in 18 countries in every continent except Antarctica. So right now, the only thing limiting us is COVID-19. So we have this kind of rule where, students can only go into these specific countries. But, as hopefully as soon as we kind of come out of this pandemic, we'll go back to sending students to other countries that are not on that list of 18. Okay, technology is always amazing to me every day. The fact that I can text somebody still in Japan at like some hour of the day and FaceTime and have it be smooth and hear you and not have to pay anything is amazing to me. So you have websites to give you resources, social media, you have Wi-Fi everywhere you go for the most part, depending on where you go, digital materials you can download and look at any time. That's huge. So you have a lot of things that you can use to do research and, watch YouTube videos and see what it's like to be in South Korea or in South Africa or Mexico, and follow people who are living there and get tips. Okay, there's more financial aid and scholarships available, depending on the program that you choose. And I have a separate workshop dedicated to the finances and scholarships on Friday. So make sure you go back to the IEW website and check that out. But, now you can use your financial aid to continue to pay for your education while you're abroad. I like to tell students, I have students studying abroad right now for fall 2021 in countries like South Korea and Ghana and Italy and Germany, and they paid the same tuition as you. Okay. There's also the greater CSUF campus community. There's more awareness of study abroad. We work together on a lot of things, especially the Office of Financial Aid. There are a lot of faculty on this campus that are champions of study abroad and that they take students on study abroad programs. So we'll talk about some of those and other departments that you can go to, the Veteran Resource Center to try to use your CalVet fee waiver. Just other offices like that, just your honors advisor and things like that, just to help make sure that, you can work study abroad into your CSUF experience. That's not to say that we don't have our own challenges. We still have some challenges. Like I said a little bit earlier, even though we get better little by little, it's still an imperfect system because of some of that history that we're fighting, especially the transferring the credit. That's like the biggest headache, but students do it all the time. They do it. There's students studying abroad right now and they make it work. But again, we get better little by little. And the reason we get better little by little is because we do have limited resources and staff. So we're able to, produce things as we can, like this dedicated academics workshop. And the other main thing is just trying to convince students that studying abroad is worth their time, and to try to combat this, get in and get out of college kind of mentality. Especially, it's very prevalent among, I am a CSU alum through and through. I got my bachelor's at in a CSU. I got my master's in a CSU. So I know what that commuter sense is like, to be like, I'm just going to go to class, do my homework, go work, eat, sleep, drive, and then just get my degree and go so I can work. Is that really what you want? Because then you're not going to have time. I didn't really take time until later after I studied abroad to make friends, to connect with people, to learn more about the people actually around me. I was more robotic. Life is a little bit more than that. And we want you to experience your college experience. Okay, so yes, don't just get in and get out. And there's other reasons for that as well. So I'm going to talk a little bit about some statistics about statistics that show, what study abroad students experience. So one thing to kind of note at the top is that study abroad participation, depending on which, journal or set of data you're looking at, they usually hover around 2 to 4%. So that's it. I haven't seen it go any higher, maybe a 5. But if you think about in terms of college educated individuals, less than 10% of people are studying abroad. That puts you, it sounds kind of nice, like I am, special because I've done this, but we want to increase it. We want more people to do it because it's such a worthwhile endeavor. But, the fact that you do it puts you in a pretty nice pool of people that have this experience, because you're going to get a lot to talk about it. And we'll talk about that some more. And then, I'm going to be quoting a lot of data for the most part. And a lot of it was based in 2019 to 2020, which is when the pandemic started to hit. So it kind of skewed that percentage now. Now it's less than 1% because some students couldn't go abroad anymore. So if students are starting to go abroad right now, as it's slowly creeping up, you're even in a much more elite group than that by taking the chance to try to do this. And so some statistics. So I really liked this set of information that I pulled from UC Merced. They've got a great website committed to just study abroad statistics, and they also cite the journals and the resources where they got them from. But one thing, and I have seen the College of Humanities also and Social Sciences also quote this statistic to promote their programs, is that 97%, so 97% of that small group of about 2 to 4%, claimed and stated that for them, they found employment within 12 months of graduation compared to 49% of students in that same period, 97%. And then additionally, students who are study abroad students stated that their starting salaries were 25% higher than those who didn't happen to study abroad. Okay, 90% of students who study abroad also got into their first or second choice of grad school, and 30% of study abroad alumni claimed that study abroad helped them choose their career and field. That's huge. Depending on the program you do, we do a lot of interviews for some programs, and sometimes when we ask the students, they don't know. And that's okay, because a lot of times they say, I'm going abroad to try to find out what it is that I want to do. I have no idea what's out there. So 34% of them came back with a better idea. Okay, and that's what the students experience. What do employers say? 59% of employers said that study abroad would be valuable in an individual's career later on with their organization. So employers do value that experience. I can attest to that. And there's more statistics off of that site. And so the other thing that makes study abroad worthwhile, and that you should definitely make sure that you get a chance to do it, is that studying abroad is recognized as what's called a high impact practice, or a HIP. So in college and universities in our field, there are about 10 HIPs there are 10 activities that are designated as high impact practices. These are things that have shown to increase student success, especially linked to graduation and retention. And it's because of the level of engagement students have to be when they study abroad. Other high impact practices like study abroad, internships, research, first year programs, community learning environment. So all of these really great things that we try to do for you, study abroad has also shown to be beneficial. And the other thing of what makes some of these statistics kind of pop out, at the end of the day, you're gaining transferable skills. I've bolded that, or all caps it, because that is a really big thing that you all need to pay attention to, because a lot of you put in your original statement of why you're in college is to improve your professional outlook, to make yourself more marketable, to gain skills, to better yourself, to get jobs. Transferable skills are kind of where it's at when it comes to that, because you can use it in any job that you're in. If you're in one position, you have transferable skills, you can move to another, and so forth. And studying abroad is great for that. Okay, so with all of this information, I just kind of want to pound it in that study abroad is not any longer, in my previous generations, that nice to have thing that only a few people can do, but a modern day must have. You should be doing this, and it's shown to increase certain professional competencies. And so, if you have any doubt, you should be looking at just as another investment in your education. It's not an add-on, it's not an extra, it should be integral to it. All right, just a few more statistics. So according to the top, NAFSA is our professional organization for international educators. They collect the stats all the time on students studying abroad and studying abroad and also coming here to study. But if you look at the statistics back in 2019, 2020, right when the pandemic was hitting. So in this column, so we have students divided by race and ethnicity. In the middle column, you have the number of students who are enrolled in colleges and universities during that year. And then you have the students who studied abroad that year, okay? And so you can see that there's some underrepresentation of certain race and ethnic groupings. And so in some cases, sometimes there's overrepresentation for students who identify as Caucasian or white, even though they only made about half of the enrollment for 2019-2020 in colleges and universities, 70%, there was an overrepresentation of this group in study abroad. Why is that? And so then also in terms of other groupings, we still see either like, you know, at pace, or this one's a little bit above, but still we could be doing better. Now that's the national average, or that's what NAFSA has stated. Now, how does study abroad and global engagement at CSUF compare? Luckily, we can always be doing better, but it looks like from this year, our trends are a little more representative of the students that we have. So the way that we code things are a little bit different, but I try to match them as best as possible. But you know, we can be doing better than 2% of our student population consisting of Black and African American students. But then also we need to heavily try to increase more students. And that's hopefully this workshop is going to help that, so they can choose programs and feel empowered to come onto these programs. But again, the pandemic also, we had to tell students they couldn't go spring 22, summer 2020. Okay, Asian Pacific Islander, again, small underrepresentation there. Caucasian, a little overrepresentation, but not as big as the national average. Hispanic and Latino, as an HSI institution, 44% of our population is Hispanic and Latino, Latinx, excuse me. And then, but also we do have that overrepresentation. So we do see it. So that's exciting. So what I want to point out to here, we can also be doing better for our Native American Indigenous populations. And then there's also more students declining to state what their racial backgrounds are. But what I want to show with this one is that more of your peers are studying abroad. So if they're studying abroad, why can't you? Right? Like sometimes that's something that I hear when I advise students all the time, or when I come across them, they say, you know, it's not for me. Why is it not for you? Okay, because what's going to happen, what I see later on in students is, in freshmen, they don't believe it's for them. Sophomore, they don't believe it's for them. And then in their junior year, they're in a class and they're listening to a peer who's almost, you know, not very much different from them. And they're telling them about their study abroad experience that they had the previous year, the previous summer, and then they start to go, oh man, that's a good idea. And then they come and talk to me. But you know, and there's a program for everybody, but you want to use those 2 years to plan out your classes. So those some of the tips that I'm going to give you. Okay, and so going into now the meat and the advising and the academics of things. So remember I talked to, I'm going to break this down into phases. So now we're going to talk about, okay, so you've just started looking into study abroad, you're now in this advising phase. Well, where do you begin? We look at the different program types that Cal State Fullerton has. Remember, we have a diverse menu of programs out there, and they can pretty much be summed up in this group of 6, okay? So I'll talk about it a little bit, because this way, when I talk about some of the benefits, you know which program I'm kind of talking about. So the first program that we have up at the top are the CSU International Programs, or CSU IP programs. These are year-long and semester-long programs. Traditionally, they were always those year-long programs that I was talking about earlier. And it wasn't until the pandemic that they added a couple of semester options, okay? And these CSU IP programs are open to the students of all the 23 campuses, from Long Beach to Fullerton, Dominguez Hills, up north to San Francisco, San Marcos, San Marcos is up there, Humboldt, and then other locations up down to San Diego, Maritime, Channel Islands, everybody. So all 23 campuses and their students are able to apply to these programs. And these programs are located at partner universities, so schools abroad, or a study center, which we have one of. So examples include Waseda University in Japan is very popular. We have Tec de Monterrey in Mexico, the CSU Study Center in Italy. So students apply to these programs, okay? The second type of program, going from large systemic to individual campuses, Cal State Fullerton has specific programs that we offer. So we offer through my office, CSUF Reciprocal Exchange programs. These are semester or year-long programs. So one wasn't, there before the other. We've always had semester and year-long programs for CSUF students. So this is exclusively for you. You cannot do a reciprocal exchange program if you are not a current CSUF student at other partner universities. So we have Chungang University in South Korea is very popular. Schema Business School in France is great for business students wanting to go to France. Coventry University in the UK. Okay, so these are the first two programs are you're going to a foreign university. The third type of program we have are called the CSUF Department and Faculty. These are shorter term programs. They tend to be much shorter. So we have as little as 1 week, but we do have a couple of full length semester programs you can look into too. These are not with foreign universities. These are our faculty. So our CSUF colleges, departments, and faculty directly manage these programs, and they let CSUF students, but they will also sometimes allow CSUF alumni or just members of the community to join their programs too. So if you have a friend at another CSU or another institution or something that wants to study abroad too, these are great programs for them, for you all to join. Examples of this, the semester program is the HSS London Spring Semester and Internship Program. So that's a semester one and it's got an internship. For anybody who's a business student, I believe we're about to launch a spring break program for management. For anybody interested in taking HCOM, which is a GE, but if you need it as well, there's a summer program for HCOM and CTVA going to Barcelona for summer 22. This just happened this week. So be on the lookout for those great programs. And actually the HSS London program is the one I did when I studied abroad. Okay, the next type of program too, this is the best one. We'll talk about this in terms of accessibility and academics, but also my office also tends to offer what's called the CSUF Co-Curricular or non-credit bearing program, meaning you're not taking any classes. So these are typically 1 week programs managed by our office, or other departments have something similar. They're open for CSUF students and alumni, and we do volunteer work, or we do, presenting research or things like that. So I got to lead a program just before the pandemic hit back in winter of 2020, in January 2020, and me and my other colleague, because there's usually 2 staff members on a program, but we led 14 students in Cuba and Havana, and we did volunteer work, we did cultural activities, we got to sightsee Havana. It was amazing. And this particular program had 2 graduate students taking marriage and family therapy. We had 1 freshman, we had a range of majors in between, very accessible for students, okay? And then we have what's called non-CSUF. So 1 through 4, it's through your school. It's through CSU or it's through CSUF. Now there's also programs where maybe you find something that's not in our CSU-CSUF network. That's fine. There's a range of programs from 1 week to year offered by study abroad, essentially companies or other basically universities abroad. We have partnerships with specific ones, but that doesn't mean you might not find one on your own that you want to go to too. So you can also do those as well. This non-CSUF category also includes virtual programs. And then I added this here, it's more of a recent add-on, but postgraduate. So, if you're really close to studying, if you're really close to graduating, you may not have that time to eke out, you don't have the units or things like that, but you still want a global experience, you can still do it after. So even though I studied abroad as an undergraduate, after I graduated from college, I taught English in Japan for 5 years on the JET program. I just needed a bachelor's degree and I signed up to go. That's something that you can do. The deadline for the next year just passed, but look into it now for future terms. And it's not just Japan that has countries like that. South Korea, Spain, France have similar programs like that. Okay, but you can do things. You can do Peace Corps, you can do Fulbright, you can do research after you study, after you graduate. So now, although it's the best time, it's a great time, it's not your only time. So you can look into this anytime, okay? All right, so going back to that spectrum of where things fit for students, students who are like, no, I need to make sure I stay on track versus like, I'll see what's out there and just do things for the experience a little bit. So there's that spectrum. And I just kind of put, now this is according to me. Some people may have different opinions on it, but as your advisor, this is what I would think. If you really need to stay on track, the very best program that I would recommend for you are those volunteer co-curricular non-credit programs, because there's no enrollment. You just sign up. It's not going to conflict with your scheduling, your units, or usually your semester, because it usually happens during the break. The pros are they're super affordable and cheap. Some of, I would argue, like our cheapest programs, most affordable programs. Students only need to be flexible regarding the program length. So sometimes students want to, stay on track but do a semester program. But if we look, and I usually advise with students, we look at, what are the possibilities. They may not be able to squeeze in that last semester in before they graduate. So a shorter program might work. And so therefore they kind of have to, reconcile some of their expectations a little bit. Cons are sometimes it is too short for some students. Maybe they want a longer program. And then also, separate from the volunteer programs, virtual and postgraduate obviously also work very well to help you stay on track. The second next program that I think is the best pairing, if you want to stay on track, will be those department programs, because you know what the courses are. Anytime you see a department program, like I said, with the HCOM one in Spain, it was HCOM 320 and CTVA, I think 360 something, but those are the classes, you know what they are, and we can manage the enrollment. So there's no way you're not going to get that class if those are the classes that you want. Some pros is they're not the cheapest, but they're mid. So the thing is, like, you pay CSU tuition, but we're packing all of these great activities for you. We're going to take you to museums, or, you're going to go see sites. You might have like a few like meals, and then, your bus to be taken around. That's all included in the price. So it kind of looks like it's a lot, but it's because it's like kind of an all-inclusive thing. So that's why. Sometimes students may need to be a little bit flexible, because if you see these two classes like HCOM 320 and CTVA, you're like, I don't need those. Well, that's what we're offering. So if you want to do this program, you might want to look into see if that's what you need. Some cons that I've heard from students is that it's a shorter leash sometimes. So it's very much sometimes can feel like a field trip experience on some programs. So on some of the longer programs, like the London one, that's not the case, because you are living in London for an entire semester. But if you're doing a summer program, you're with the professor, you will get up in the morning, maybe attend lectures, go to this site, have dinner, maybe a couple hours on your own, come back. You're doing a lot of studying. You're in addition to your travel, you are cramming a summer program into it. If you've ever taken summer school, that's a lot of work. And so, sometimes it can feel like that, but sometimes, students do have the evenings off and weekends off or things like that, where you might be able to just have some downtime, but that's something that students have said. Okay. In the middle, we have the non-CSF provider and direct enroll programs. This varies. That's why there's an asterisk. But the reason why I say it's a good one is because sometimes it's easier to research courses that you need on their websites. And sometimes, depending on the type of program it is, they manage their own enrollment. So if it's like, hey, I need this business class and I see it and you sign up for it, they can probably guarantee you're going to be in that business course. But it depends. Every provider non-CSF program is a little different. Okay. So pros, great customer service. So remember, these are essentially, it's for most part, sometimes they're companies or they're another school trying to get you to go over there. But it's also great for that immersive experience if you're doing stuff like the semester program. Cons are they're not the cheapest program. They're actually sometimes some of the most expensive programs. And it's also limited financial aid. For non-CSF programs, you can only use federal aid. So things like the Pell Grant, federal unsubsidized and subsidized loans and things like that. And the other thing which we'll talk about is your courses will be transfer units, okay? The last two that are more on the experience side, we have the exchange programs where you go to those foreign universities that we partner with. CSUIP is probably the next best one to kind of help try to make sure you stay on track, because these programs have been along so long, they have these dedicated documents called academic bulletins where you just read it and they'll tell you basically the rules of the study abroad program, maybe some classes you can look into, and then enrollment just varies. So that's the part that makes it a little hard. Like, you don't know whether you're going to register for classes before sometimes or when you get there. Every program's a little different. It is the best for the most immersive experience. So if you want to go to country to study your major there, live with locals, practice the language, these are some of the best ones. Mid-tier price, not the cheapest, but just, mid. And you can use your state and federal aid in addition to paying CSU tuition. So these are great options. The cons are students need to be very flexible about what they want to take. So, I can help you plan your classes and stuff, but you still got to be really flexible. And also transferring those courses does take some time back, which we'll talk about. And then CSF Reciprocal Exchange, those ones I tell students, I can guarantee what you're going to take the least. So you really need to be flexible. So a lot of the research that you do into the classes is online on their own website. So you're going to that school's website and the quality of the sites can vary. Enrollment also varies by program. I have some reciprocal exchanges where it's fine. It's not an issue. They register before they leave. And I have some programs where you register when you get there. So that can make some students who want to stay on track a little nervous. Okay, pros, again, that immersive experience, cheap. So this is the second to most affordable program after those week-long volunteer programs. And you can use, again, state and federal aid. And then the cons are, again, you just, if it's not too much of a con for you, but you just have to be super flexible, okay? Have a lot of backup ideas of courses that you're willing to take. And, after you're done with the program, it does take a little bit of time to transfer those grades over. So that's the spectrum of the classes, okay? All right, so now we're going to break into the meat of it, and we have like 15 minutes left, but the academics portions of it, okay? So just to break down a couple of things here is that sometimes students don't know this when I'm meeting with them, but your degrees have a certain number of units you're supposed to take. Most of them are 120. I've broken down that list there. For fine arts and music degrees, a little bit higher, but roughly most of you need to at least have a minimum of 120 units to graduate, okay? That's taken off of the Academic Advising Center graduate requirements website. And your units, those 120 years plus units, can be made up of your major units, your GE units, your minor units, your elective units, and then some of the university requirements like English 301, okay? So that means that, you have all of these different things that you can study abroad for as well. And so my tips as an advisor for you is the earlier you look into the SAGE process, the better, so you can plan out your courses. I was just talking today with a student talking about one of HSS's summer programs to Vienna, that they're planning for summer 22. And when we looked at the classes, one was a GE class that she was excited to take, and one was an English 301 class that she was taking right now. So some of those classes that you're hoping, that you're taking sometimes can be offered abroad. So looking into that as early as you can, saving your classes. Working with your advisors is going to be important. Your undergraduate advisors, if you're looking to your GEs, your major advisor, minor, honors, things like that, let them know ahead of time studying abroad is something you want to do. And then they can tell you, okay, well, take these classes here, and then these are the classes you can take abroad. We'll transfer those, work with them. Some specific majors can be a little bit more challenging to study abroad than others. I've listed the ones that are some of the most difficult. Accounting and communicative disorders, that's because it's just taught differently abroad. So it's not like you can't take those classes, but if you do and you try to transfer them back, they're like, this is different. This is not going to count. That doesn't mean that you can't study abroad. Same thing for human services. Human services is like a Cal State Fullerton specific major. Not even other CSUs have human services. That doesn't mean you can't study abroad. It just means we got to plan your courses a little bit differently. Okay, so what do we do for these majors? A is you can remember to kind of round out what you can take abroad. Look into taking your GEs, electives, do internships, consider study away programs too. That's a big one. So just because accounting might be taught differently in France doesn't mean it's taught differently in New York, in Philadelphia, in Seattle, and other places. So you can actually do internships. I have a student right now going for spring 22 who's going to do an internship in Philadelphia, which is really cool. So look into those as well. And also your department programs. So like I mentioned earlier, summer for spring break, management is going to have a business program. And then also human services tends to have their own department programs where it's their faculty. It's usually a summer program in Barcelona. It's a very popular location. Okay, so my tips for you, save those upper division GEs, save those electives, and possibly internships abroad. Those are the easiest courses to try to get approved for later. And why is because at least two categories of those GEs are humanities and social sciences. Those classes, if you look at the categories, especially for those upper division GEs, they're things like literature in Mexico, or they're like French music, or they're like Pan-African dance. Those are obviously classes you can take abroad. So those are the ones you want to save. The other thing too, is I'll put it in the chat. We have links to college flyers. So we recently updated this where we have links. We have like the colleges and where you can find certain majors in certain programs. So let me try to get that for you. And I will try to put that in the chat. Sorry, bear with me for just a second. I don't want to forget to give this to you. Okay, so let me drop that in the chat right now. And in addition to, and if you can just let me know if everybody can open, that should be fine. In addition to the college flyers on there, there's a scholarship flyer, there's other small program flyers, there's our link tree, which takes you to our Discord, our Instagram, and all these other good things. So check that out. Okay, so continuing with the academics part, okay? different programs are going to transfer back different unit types. You may not have realized that there are different unit types, okay? So I'm going to go through this table and then I break down what are these units up at the top. So there are resident units, okay? And resident units, the programs that will give you resident units no matter kind of what you do are the CSUF department program or faculty led. So because you see that class, it's HCOM 320, okay, that's the class. And so that's going to give you the resident units. CSUIP will also give you resident units, and it will show up in one of two different ways. It will either show up as international studies, either $299 or $499, depending on the level, or if you get it signed off for a particular class, let's say that class happened to be also human communications and you got it approved by your advisor or the human communications department, then it will show up as HCOM 320. Getting courses approved is the key to getting it to look specific, a certain way on your transcript, okay? A mix of the two. So in this type of program, you might see yourself earning a mix of resident and transfer units. That's the reciprocal exchange. So what happens is if you, again, get those courses signed off, they're going to show up like specific classes like HCOM 320. But if you end up taking classes where there's no CSUF equivalent, you're going to earn transfer elective units. Okay, I already talked about major, minor elective, things like that. And it's not like major electives, it's like free electives. It's like basketball or something like that. It's like not electives usually, because sometimes some majors say, oh, major electives. These are like, they have no relation to your major, minor, or GEs. These are just like fun classes, exploratory classes. Okay, transfer units. Non-CSUF provider or direct enroll, no matter if they get approved for your TDA, which is a little bit different, they will always show up in your transcript as transfer units, okay? If you're from community colleges or you've taken some community colleges and you've looked at your transcript, you kind of know what that looks like. It's just a bar that says the term and where you got the classes from. I'll show you some examples later. No units, okay? Volunteer programs, there are no units, so you don't have to worry about how it's gonna look on your transcript because it doesn't reflect in it, okay? So what are the resident and transfer units? Well, resident, if you think of when you're studying abroad, you know, wherever you go, that's going to be your host country. They're hosting you, right? You're a guest. Your home country, your home university is Cal State Fullerton. So kind of associate home and residence together. But for resident and resident units, those are courses taken at Cal State Fullerton, okay? Every student getting a degree, you have to take at least 30 units in resident. If you've always been here, that's not a problem. But if you're a transfer student and you've only brought in what's those transfer units down here, you need to start making sure that you get up to that 30 units, okay? Resident units are what shows up in detail on your CSUF transcript. Transfer units are units that you took somewhere else and you transferred to Cal State Fullerton, okay? And you know, some of the things to note about that is there's a cap to how many you can transfer, and I'll get to that in the next slide. And also transfer units vaguely show up on your transcript. They don't really say much, okay? All right, so we're gonna look at some sample transcripts to see what I'm talking about and how they kind of transfer back. Now, please note, transcripts and TDAs are not interchangeable. Sometimes I have students going, oh yeah, it's on my TDA, or oh, it's my transcript. I'm like, we're talking about two separate things, okay? Your TDA, I kind of liken it to a shopping list. It's a list of like categories and blanks, and it says, do this, do that, take this class in this order. So it's kind of telling you what to do. Your transcript is like your receipt. It's what you actually bought. It's what you took. Okay, and so TDAs can show up in different categories with your major and GEs, you know, and transcripts, they don't tell you which one is your major. It tells you what your major is, but all of the classes just get listed under each term. Okay, they don't differentiate which one is which. All right, so let's take a look at some examples. So when it comes to the resident units, right, and only earning resident units, here's an example of what a department faculty-led program looks like. I'm using the London Spring Semester Internship program. That's a semester program where you're taking at least 12 units. As you can see, they're all Cal State Fullerton classes, so they don't look any different from, let's say, some of you are taking, you know, your classes for fall 2021. Obviously, your classes are like listed, right? And then it's going to list the grade, some notes, your GPA is listed on there, but that is in full detail. Okay, CSUIP, here's an example of a student also from spring 2019. So here was theirs. There's going to list a study agreement. This is how I know they're an IP program. They went to Universidad of Bulletins in Madrid. Okay, remember how I said you might get a mix? So here you see that one class wasn't counted for anything. It stayed as International Studies 492, okay? And it was like listed as no credit. But it looks like this student who looks like they were a Spanish major, they got specific classes signed off. Therefore, these are the classes that transferred back. So if he had not gotten any of these other classes approved, then this transcript would have had 15 units, 13 of International Studies credit, okay? Let's look at some other ones that might have some transfer units. So here's a reciprocal exchange example where this student has a mix. So up at the top, you see that we have those transfer credit units where I said it's really vague. So she actually took nine units, so that's 3 classes, and it didn't get approved for anything. She just got elective units, okay? But it looks like she managed to get 1 psych class approved, so that's what's showing up. So those are the benefits of the departments, the IPs, and reciprocal exchanges. You have the ability to get those classes, even though you took them somewhere else, to show up like they were Cal State Fullerton classes, okay? Now with the non-CSUF provider and direct enroll examples, it's just gonna stay really vague. Even if it's gonna help you towards specific classes towards your major, on your transcript at the end of the day, it's just gonna say what the institution was. This is how I know it's a provider. It's because Tulane University is in the US. A lot of providers are based in other places in the US. So it's gonna say, so we received a transcript from Tulane, there was 15 units. In the direct enroll case, direct enroll, like I said, is a foreign university. So this one happens to be National Taiwan University. She took 17 units, but you can't see what she took. Now, are transfer units bad? No, there's nothing wrong with having transfer. We have plenty of students with transfer units. The only thing is, just as my advisor note to you, is if you end up in the future applying to graduate school, law school, medical school, credential programs, or anything that requires like applications and admissions, normally that process requires you to get official transcripts from every institution you got credit from. So we have students who have CSUF transcripts, have a couple of classes they transferred back from community colleges. Now they're studying abroad. That's at least 3 or 4 transcripts. And those transcripts are not always free. Sometimes they can be at least $8 to $12 to $15 or $20 a pop. So now you have to plan for that, right? The other thing I mentioned a little bit earlier is that students can only transfer about 70 units. So if you're a community college student, you've transferred maybe about 70, you need to start earning resident units. If you study abroad, they bump that up to 90. So that's not too bad. It's to accommodate some of those extra transfer units that you might get. All right, so now let's talk about the application phase and getting those courses approved. So I talked about how if you get courses signed off, they will show up in a specific way on your transcript. So let's talk about that. So now that you know a little bit about the programs and the types of units you could potentially earn, how do you research the courses, okay? So researching the courses starts obviously in the advising phase, right? Before you can even apply to a school, you probably want to get a sense of, well, what am I going to take over there, right? So the research really begins from the get-go, but then you delve more into it in the application phase. And so researching courses, they're all different depending on those programs because the information is displayed differently. With IP programs, there's a document called an academic bulletin that kind of tells you what the classes that might be offered are. With reciprocal exchanges, you usually go to our partner university's website to click around and find and download syllabi if it's available. With department programs, again, you don't need it because department programs, those are Cal State Fullerton classes already. You don't have to get those approved. So those are really easy, okay? With non-CSUF programs, again, their websites tend to be really easy to navigate. If you go on there, most likely the course is listed, the syllabi is there, you just download it, show it to your advisor to get those courses approved, okay? No matter what you do, as you're looking for information, download that information, save it, bookmark those pages so it's easier for you to come back to research your programs. And the reason why I have this image of like a bullseye on here is more so with the exchange programs like IP and reciprocal exchange. I call the academics portion kind of like hitting a bullseye because there are 3 hurdles you got to kind of go over. A, are the classes that you're interested in even offered at that school? Okay. Even if the subject that you're taking is offered at that school, does Cal State Fullerton recognize those classes as equivalent to give you credit for? If that matters to you, you'll want to know that. If it doesn't, you're getting electives or some sort of credit from it. The other one is you actually have to then register in those classes. You can get a bunch of classes approved, but depending on the registration style of the school, if it's early and online, awesome, not a problem. If it's late and you get there, you run into the same problem that we have here where classes might be full or classes might be on top of each other, or you don't have the prerequisite. So that kind of thing. So it just depends. All right. When it comes to researching the courses, you always start on our portal. So here's a little banner of our Sage portal, but I broke down the steps because students are like, where do I research the courses? Okay, so I broke them up by phases. So CSUIP, you start on our portal. You know, if you're looking at different IP programs, you're going to click the name of the program. It'll take you to our main site where we give a general breakdown of what it's like to do that program. And then you go to the IP website because that's their program. They will have more information there. You go under the academic section where there's the academic bulletin and you just read through the document. Sometimes they have little hyperlinks to then go to that school's website to download syllabi. You can do that, but the academic bulletin is a great place to start. Again, with the exchanges, you will be basically connected to our partner's website to do your research. Okay, with department programs, again, you don't need to, but a lot of the approved department programs will be on our website, so you can actually look at what the classes are. Non-CSUF, like I said, you just go to their sites. They'll usually have syllabi ready for you to download. Non-CSUF, not an issue. Oh yeah, co-curricular, sorry. The last one should be co-curricular. You know, there's no classes, so there's nothing for you to check out, but you can at least look at what are the activities, what are you going to do, you know, and see what you can look forward to on that. Okay, so the study abroad transfer credit approval form, this is the key to getting all of those courses to show up a certain way. So once you've done some initial research, and you won't ever be done. Sometimes you have to keep going back, you know, to look at more courses and syllabi and things like that. But essentially, you're going to take that information and you're going to meet with an individual in those respective departments and with the person who has the authority to approve certain classes. So for example, if you're a business student, you might take your information and you would go to the business advising center. You might talk to an advisor there, but ultimately there's one advisor at the top, Marina Zarati, who's going to be the one to formally sign off on these. For the other, usually colleges and departments, you usually contact them, maybe a department chair, and they'll refer you to who will help you with that. Sometimes, like I said, it's department chair, maybe it's another faculty member, but you know, we have so many departments on this campus, they are all different. So I don't have like a list for you. The best thing is contact the department chair, say you're trying to get some courses approved, and then they'll direct you, okay? All right, so this form right here that you're seeing is the key to getting things approved. Once you start an application, there's a place for you to download it, but it's also on every brochure. So if you're looking at Waseda University or Chungang and you go to the academic section, it says you have to get courses approved, there's a link to that. So you don't necessarily have to have an application, but this is definitely in the application. Okay, so what's gonna happen is the instructions will be there on that form. You will put your information, and host university is where you're going. So as I said before, Waseda or Chungang or Schema. So you're going to list the courses there. And then with your advisor who has the person to approve the classes with you, they're going to say, oh yeah, that finance class at Schema, that's similar to our finance class here. I'm going to put the title here and I'm going to sign it. It can be Adobe because of, you know, virtual and COVID and things like that. And then they're going to say, is this for your major, your minor, your GE, your elective? But that's the key. And so then you just want to collect as many of those classes and signed off as possible. One tip, although you can start getting courses signed off, this is not due by any application period. So, you know, when you're applying for a program and you're meeting deadlines and things like that, don't freak out that you don't have courses approved. That's not due. This is just to help make sure that you're applying to the program that is right for you, okay? If you don't, you just need to make sure you're researching your classes. Okay, and so one thing is we're almost coming out of time. There's a lot of content. I think I'm about maybe 2/3 of the way done. And so if anybody needs to go, you're welcome to. This is going to be recorded and posted again, but if you've got time to kind of go a little bit over, I'm fine here, as I also want to make sure that I make time for questions. So sorry, we're gonna go a little bit over. And so when can you actually get courses approved? Let's say, you know, yeah, you're welcome, Yvonne. Thank you for coming. Okay, and so you can get them as early as the advising phase. Okay, you can get them anytime. Sometimes there are some departments that won't necessarily sign your form yet until you come back. So one of those departments is like our Japanese department. They help our students immensely, but the thing is they know that you won't know what classes you might get there. So they're not going to bother with it yet. They're just going to go, just take the classes, come back, and we'll sort it out. So that happens. So, you know, you need to talk to the different departments, you know, about when to get things signed off and things like that. But you can get it as early as the advising phase, during the application phase, before you leave, sometimes when you're already abroad, but a lot of the times too, students get more courses signed off when they come back. The problem with that is that they've already taken the course. So, you can meet with them and have your syllabi and have the textbooks that you used while you were studying abroad, and they can go, oh yeah, this class is this equivalent CSUF class that you're trying to get credit for, or they'll look at them and be like, yeah, it's not. You already took the class. So that's the hard part. So that's why earlier is better, but every department's a little bit different. Okay, so then in the pre-departure, I don't know if I can backtrack to that. So the pre-departure, actually, so after you're accepted, just before you're ready to go, that's when you can start to upload the transfer credit approval form, if you have them. Like again, some students do it after too. Okay. Also in this phase is when you might be able to start to register for your courses, which is great if your host country allows it. And then for CSUIP and exchange students, while you are also registering for courses abroad, you will at the same time be enrolled in a class at Cal State Fullerton. This class, which is labeled as an INST class, is what charges you the CSU tuition to take, is the CSU tuition that you pay for your semester abroad. Okay, so you'll be concurrently enrolled. Department programs, obviously you're going to be in those classes that you saw. Non-CSUF you won't be, because you'll be taking classes with your provider or your direct enroll. Okay, so what happens while you're abroad and on your program? So for the rest of you, you'll eventually finally be enrolled in your classes if you haven't been already. So a couple of really important things to note are how many units you need to be taking. So you need to make sure you are in the minimum number required of units for your specific program. For example, Cal State IP programs, you need to be taking a minimum of 15 units every semester. With Cal State Fullerton Reciprocal Exchange, CSUF department, like the HSS London, non-CSUF programs, 12 units is the minimum that you need to be enrolled, because full-time for us is 12 units, okay? Can you take more than the 12 to 15 units? You can, it's not really, so I don't recommend taking more than 15 units. If you have to, that's fine. It's just, if you can avoid it, I would. And that's just because you, especially if you're going to IP Reciprocal Exchange, you're in a foreign university. You're probably dealing with like language translation, you'll get fatigue, you're going through culture shock, you're just absorbing things, your brain is going to be so stimulated that the more units that you add, it's going to be a little bit harder, right? And classes abroad kind of tend to be harder. So especially with IP and reciprocal exchanges and some of the non-CCF, I tell students, prepare yourself mentally and get your study skills set like you're going to go to Berkeley for a semester. You have to have that kind of attitude. And then also when it comes to studying virtual classes or taking virtual classes while they're abroad, that's a common question I get. I would say no more than one. And students still have to get that checked out with me first to see that it's a good option for them, okay? The other thing too is like currency and measurements, be aware that different countries have different academic unit conversions. For example, in the UK, they use a different standard where, for example, one class might be worth 20 UK units. And then that translates to 10 what's called ECTS units, which for us would be 5 units. So a class in the UK would be worth 5 units here, right? But some of our classes, the average is 3. So that kind of gives you a little idea as to how intense that class might be. And so if you're especially in Europe where these ECTS are common, for example, 30 ECTS comes about to 15 US semester units. Therefore, yeah, you're enrolled full time. Some other countries, especially in Asia, the conversion's a little bit more similar, like 1-to-1. So it's a little easier to know whether you're in the right amount of units or not. Okay, but if you have ever any doubt if you're in enough units, you can always email me. And then while you're abroad, my tip is save your coursework, save all of that stuff. It's easier to do now. You can use, Dropbox and cloud and stuff like that, but save that, because when you come back and you still need to get courses transferred over and approved, that's what you're going to use to show to those advisors and those people who have the authority to approve the classes. Okay, so some academic culture shock. So a lot of you, especially when I asked you, why do you want to go abroad? You're like, I want to experience culture. I want to learn different things, a different perspective. This is what it sometimes looks like. Okay, it's not always like peachy and, like learning different slang and trying different foods. It's, you're really immersing yourself into the way that another culture operates, especially academically. So we talked a little bit about how the registration process can also be already be different. The units are already different, but some other like academic, culturally different things is there may or may not be the idea of GEs or electives abroad. So for example, here and in higher university in the US, we do have general electives. It's meant to make us a more well-rounded, competent person, right? But in places in Europe, for example, they don't have GEs. That's a high school thing. Once they're in college, they're only studying their major. So there are schools and programs study abroad where you're not able to take GEs, you're only taking your major. And there are some countries that do also follow that pattern of taking GEs. So if you do need GEs, you want to make sure you're going to those countries, okay? The student faculty dynamic might be different. I had one student coming back from a program abroad, and she just couldn't get over how her faculty member did not help her. So here at Cal State Fullerton, we faculty and staff do everything we can to be accessible and accommodating to our students, right? Especially for many who are first gen, this is their first time. We want to make sure that they, don't feel alienated, and we're very supportive, a very nurturing environment. When you go abroad, sometimes that may not be the case. It's not that they don't want to help you. It's just culturally, they're like, the expectation is, their version of bending over backwards for you might be, go visit tutoring, that kind of thing. And it's not, they put you in more of a seat of responsibility to take ownership of your education. And it's not bad. It's just different. It's a cultural difference. And sometimes students really struggle with that. Especially, I had a couple of students who were studying in the UK, and the very first piece of feedback they gave back to me was they said, we realize now how babied we are at CSUF. So take those kind of things into consideration. Coursework might be different. So here in the US, in Fullerton, you might be used to homework, quizzes, presentation, participation points, extra credit. That may not be a thing where you go abroad. Sometimes, a lot of the times, especially again in those European countries, your grade might be determined by two things, a midterm and a final exam, and both are written. That's it. That's what your grade is made up of. Okay, so my tip for those students is, if you're looking to go to some of these exchange programs, and especially those in Europe, start developing your writing skills. Make sure it's very clear. And then also grading. This is a big one. So here at Cal State Fullerton, we use traditional letter grades, A through F, and then we calculate things on a GPA basis. And it's possible here to earn straight A's, even straight A's, and earn a GPA of 4.0 and higher. Where you go abroad, sometimes that is unheard of. Sometimes they will not allow anybody to get straight A's because that's perfection and that's unheard of. Like, it's a cultural kind of thing. And so sometimes you might think that, wow, I really deserved an A in that class. I've had a student say this, and the professor, through the grading scale, it's not arbitrary. They're like, no, it's a B. And so I've had people kind of come back to me that they were upset about that. The other thing too is, even if you're in a certain country and you get straight A's, and that is possible, there's a conversion. So it's like currency again too. It's weighted a little bit differently. So even if you got straight A's in one country, it'll probably still come out to maybe so let's say it's one letter grade lower. So if you got like A minuses, or like you got A's, it might come back here to an A minus. Or if you got an A minus, when it comes back here, it might be a B. So that's something else you might want to look into too, because I've had students who are very attached to their GPAs and they do not want that messed with. So because they want to get into medical school and stuff like that. So if that's the case, do not go to programs where there's a different grade conversion. Stick to department programs. Okay, so when you're a returnee, congrats. So we've gone through that journey, right? And so we studied abroad. Well, now what? So if you are doing the department programs, it's the same thing. The faculty have to submit grades by the same deadline as other faculty. So you don't have to worry about anything, and nothing has to be approved. Nothing has to transfer over. That's why I like the department programs. With CSUIP, Reciprocal Exchange, and non-CSU programs, you were studying somewhere else. We need to wait for your grades to be finalized and for a transcript or academic report to come to us. So, it can take a while. And so then at this point, while we're waiting for your transcript, you can get more classes signed off now that you're back, talk to your advisors, and then give us those extra signed off sheets. And then once we have it, we send a letter to registration records. Eventually they put it into your TDA, and then you meet with your advisor to put it in the right place. So that's kind of what that process looks like. And it can take up to a semester. So when people say, can it delay my graduation? Well, if you're a senior and this was your last semester, then yeah, you're not really graduating spring 22 because we need to transfer the grades. You're graduating fall 22, okay? And so that's something to note. So that's why the earlier the better. If you study abroad as a junior and we're still waiting, well, you're still taking classes. So eventually it will kind of catch up. So that's that one place where, yes, technically it could. All right, and so this is just a little snapshot again of some of the characteristics of our programs and where they kind of fit. So there will be a recording of this, and I think what I'll do for everybody here is I'll give you a copy of the presentation so you can get a better shot of this. Maybe we'll make a flyer out of it so you can kind of see. So if you want, like, based on any specific characteristics, you can see which programs are a best match for you. Okay, and so I know this is a little wordy, but I found this really profound. And again, I just want to share it because it's a little bit of perspective. So bear with me, we're almost done. I know we're 10 minutes over, but wise words from a SAGE student. So that's why I like calling us SAGE, because SAGE just means wise, especially through reflection and experience. But this came from a student who just finished applying for spring 22. He's going to London. He's doing a non-CCR program, and he gave me permission to share this with you. He's very kind. His name is Cyrus. But he wrote in his statement of purpose for studying abroad, he said, I chose to study abroad for a variety of reasons. Initially, the idea of studying abroad never passed my mind as a student because I was trying to focus on grinding out units as fast as I could in order to enter the workforce as soon as possible. However, when it was brought to my attention by his parents, that was awesome. His parents encouraged him to study abroad. I realized that an opportunity like this won't ever likely cross my path again. Being able to see what it is like living in another country and sharing the perspective of a student my age attending university in a foreign country can only happen now if I choose to act on it. I made the decision that it would be good to go because it would be an eye-opening experience for me and would be great at exposing me to things I might never see. I know it would make me a more open-minded person and I'd be able to learn more about myself about going abroad, on top of just being a fun, cool experience that I will never forget. The challenge I had when deciding to do study abroad was that I had to reconsider my way of how I perceived school. I have always been on laser focused mode with my approach, where I would just think all that matters is staying on track and getting through it. Choosing studying abroad made me realize I will always have this education, and it is important to take in all of what it has to offer and not always rush through things. It made me think about how when I come back, I will try to look more into what campus can offer, and made me eager to make the most of my final semester since I only get this time in my life once. So if that's not a reason to encourage you to study abroad, I don't know what is. And that's it. So I'll stick around for questions. Also join us for some of our other IEW workshops. I have that one on finances on Friday from 1 to 2 p.m. And our Global Titan Ambassadors have a really fun game that they created called Mythbusters. So please check that out. It's really awesome. Okay, so I see people leaving, but feel free to stick around in the chat and I'm here. Hi, Amy and Emily, how are you? Emily, you good? Oh, awesome. Cool. Let me know if you have any questions. I know we met earlier today. Hey, Abby. Oh, your voice is squeaky. I can sidebar with you on the side. Let me go ahead and check out of the room. I'll see you in a bit.